Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally. This is Coach's Corner. Now, you may recognize Allie Stone from the Question Guy. And that link to the description, in the description of this video, that link to our conversation is right there. I asked her to come back because she inspires people to be better people. And we're going to find out all about that. But for those of you who don't want to watch the original conversation, she's going to give us some insight as to how she got here and how she helps people to become dynamic people. Allie, welcome to this conversation.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for having me back. I super appreciate it. I'm really enjoying our conversations. They're a lot of fun for me. So thank you, and enjoying your conversations you have with everybody else too. It's just so great to
I
be
appreciate
a
that.
part of your community and watch it all. So yeah. So as you said, I'm Allie. My name's Allie Stone, and I'm the founder of a company called The Inspired Leader. And this let's call it chapter in my life came to me through my experience in hospitality. And as you mentioned, I talk about that a little bit more on the Question Guy episode. And so that story is there in detail. But really, what happened to me in the hospitality industry is that I became extremely passionate about this idea of what I like to call inspired leadership and how we all have the ability to connect with something larger, something more meaningful in our businesses and as leaders, and how if we really focus on that, we can create an experience at work for ourselves and for the people we lead that changes our lives and that changes the world. And so it's really big thinking stuff for me, but I think it's really important because we spend a lot of time at work, as we all
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and if we don't as leaders understand that we have a responsibility and an honor to create an environment, again, not only for ourselves but for the people that we lead, that makes our lives and their lives better, then I think we're kind of missing out on something. And so that's kind of like this whole idea of inspired leadership and where it all came from.
So when you talk about inspired leadership, are you trying to train people to be better leaders, or are you uh, inspiring those underneath you to be better people? So can you clarify that?
Yeah, so I generally work with leaders, mid to senior level managers and leaders, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So I work with the people kind of at the helm of the companies and leading the team because I really believe that as leaders, it starts with us. We have to learn how to lead ourselves
Mm.
first and do the work before we can lead other people. And so, to me, that's where I believe the change can happen in the world. And I believe that the impact can be created. So, I encourage those leaders to go back and share what they learn and practice with me, with their teams, and create that type of culture and atmosphere within their organizations or businesses.
So it begs the question, what is an inspired leader? Why use the word inspired? Because I have conversations with leadership coaches a lot, and we talk about having that vision, the mission, the purpose, and alignment. But you're using a different word. You are specifically using the word inspired. So what is that? What's the context here?
Well, it's very intentional because for me, in my own personal experience, the moments or the times in my life where I have been inspired, where I have felt called or felt creative in my role, or felt like I was aligned, which I like to think is an inspired way of thinking. I was moving towards my highest good. I was moving towards a place in my career that was satisfying, that was fulfilling, that was helping other people, that was contributing to the greater good. So I love the word inspired because I think to me, it just brings forward this feeling of like, we can connect with something bigger, and we can, and I know it from my own experience. And so it's a little bit different for everybody what that means and how they connect with it. But I always really like to say it's like a practice, right? Everything in life is like a practice, and when we work to connect with that in our careers and also in our lives, we can have really remarkable experiences.
So I know just from conversations, that when I talk to leadership coaches, it's about leading the organization. It's about creating a culture of effectiveness, removing the toxicity and all those other things that create I guess, a unified whole. But you're not talking about leadership from that perspective. That's not what I'm getting. I heard you specifically identify something outside or larger than oneself to become a part of or bring people towards. So this is a bit different ideology that I typically hear about. So please explain to me, at the very least, and to our audience, what you mean by this larger thing, this greater good, and how do we step into that?
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that question. That's a good question. So I like to talk about how everything is an ecosystem. And everything, if you think about the ecosystem of the world, one thing affects another. And it's kind of like this circular cause and effect, right? That happens. Well, this happens as a leader. This happens in our career. This happens in our lives. And so I think when we start to embrace this concept and start to understand that there's always something bigger at play, that every action we take has a ripple effect down the road that we can't necessarily always see. But if we start to get conscious and become aware that there is a ripple effect, we start to be more conscious in the decisions we make. We start to work towards, again, this bigger type of thinking. And so I think that when it comes to this idea of moving towards, a higher good or something greater as a leader, I think when we start to connect with that, we start to feel number one, we start to feel different about our business, right? So I often work with leaders who they're grinding and they're burnt out and they're like, oh my gosh, I just like hate this right now, right? And I'm like, well, why did you start? Like,
That's a good
that's
question. Why
there.
did you
Why?
start?
Yeah. Why did you start doing what you were doing? Right? Because there was a reason. And often what happens is life is just so crazy and the world we live in is insane. And there's so much coming at us all the time that we can let that I don't know, dampen our capacity, put a cloud over our capability, right? And so, what I really do is I really help leaders understand that that's not the way it has to be or needs to be. And there's a way to live and lead beyond all of the pressures of the world so that you can come through authentically and bring yourself most fully to your job and to the world. And when we do that, Keith, you know that you interview amazing people, and when they're connected with their authenticity, you see that and you feel drawn and connected to them. And so, my hope is just to help more leaders in the world see that that's possible and that they can enjoy their careers, that they can have fun, and that they can find integration between it all. So,
Well, let's go back to the question that you just posed to your clients. Why did you start it all? And in that respect, I ask the question to ask the question. Sometimes people just start a business
yeah.
for the foundational thing as I need to make a living. How does one step into the ideology of that bigger picture? Because it may not have been there to begin with. And sometimes it's not even something to conceptualize. And for example, I created a podcast called the Envision Speakers Series, where the intention was to change the conversation around mental health. And since that inception, I didn't even see at the start, at the beginning of it all, where this could possibly go, because I was simply fed up with the idea that we're not healthy. Um, but since then, people have embraced the idea, have come to me about I want to be on the show, and now it's evolving into other things. So going back to you, how does one step into that bigger picture when it may not be clear what that picture is?
Mm. Yeah, can I just refer to your story for a second too? Because I think there's something important there. It's like because you were open to this conversation, you knew something needed to change, you were almost guided. And as you took those steps, it started to become clear what this might become. And so often when we start things, we don't know. Like when I started the Inspired Leader, I was like, I want to help other leaders see what I've seen. I had an amazing career in the hospitality industry. And I was like, I would love to help other people access that. Because when I left, I recognized very quickly that many other people don't, right? And so, but what I do know on the other side is that it's possible. It takes work, takes intention.
Hmm.
So yeah, so if somebody started a business or a career and didn't really have a why before, I don't really think that matters. I think what's really important is to come back home, to come back to who you are, to start to really connect with what you value personally, what you value professionally, start to do that work, and then figure out what that why is. For example, let's say you're a manufacturing business and I don't even know the lingo, but you're making some sort of bits for the oil field, right? And you're
Most
like,
people
well,
just call it you manufacture widgets.
you manufacture widgets and you're like, what is the why behind this? Like, how could I seriously be connected to something bigger? It's not always, we get caught up in like the what we're doing. And what I think is important to point out of this, and this is really deep work I go into with clients and I'm giving it on a really high level,
Mhm.
but what's really important to connect with is how we want to be. So the widgets, whatever, but what kind of a leader do you want to be? Again, what kind of an experience do you want to create for the people in your business and on your team? How do you want to connect with people? How do you, right? So all of these things are accessible to all of us,
Well,
any industry.
so are you literally telling me when you identified the being part, the doing part comes natural? Is that what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing?
Absolutely. And what I also have identified, which is really cool, that I love to talk about, is that when we identify the being, people are inspired to come with us and the doing gets done way better. Like people want to help us out. They want to, you know what I mean? They want to help us do the doing things that have to be done
Mhm.
because they're inspired to come with you on this journey. So many leaders are grinding it out and they're like, oh my God, I have so much to do. I have so many tasks. Like there's no way I could like think about these things. And it's like one of those paradox thoughts, right? It's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
totally
Mhm.
counterintuitive, but it's like if you actually lean into this, you will have people who are motivated, who are inspired, who find purpose in what you do. And when you have that, you have long-term team members. Then we start to get to the strategy stuff you're talking about that other coaches talk about, because this
Yeah.
strategy stuff is all very important, but this is the foundational work. If we don't connect with this, we can do all the strategy work till the cows come home. But if you're not connected as a leader, your people aren't going to buy in. They're not going to stay. You're maybe not even going to buy in, right? And so I think there's a really important piece that sometimes we miss about taking this step back when it comes to making this connection.
So you talked about who you serve. So your impact is mostly on leaders, executive level or entrepreneurs, somebody who's um, at the forefront of whatever helm that is.
Mhm.
We talked about the bigger picture, and we haven't talked about why this is important. I know you talked about, your success in the hospitality industry. Um, is there a trigger here that you haven't disclosed yet as to why this is intrinsically important to you to do this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons, and I've had some experiences in my life that have put me on the path that I'm on now. But number one that comes to mind is being a woman in business. So when I started with Original Joe's, I was the only woman at the table. And not that I wasn't welcome, but it was difficult for me. And so I am passionate about helping women as well. Specifically, I work with women and men, but when I get to work with a woman, I love helping her see what's possible for her. I think we're in a really amazing time right now in business and in the world for women and men to come together collectively and to share the beauty that both of us bring to the world and really create a new level of consciousness in business and like do some really amazing things without going too deep on that. And then I also think that for me, I have seen, I have seen many people not reach their fullest potential. I've seen myself not reach my fullest potential at times because of things that have stopped me, maybe a roadblock or fear or my ability or whatever. And at this point in my life, I think when now that I'm here, I'm just like, I think we can do anything we set our minds to. And I think that that's a really beautiful way of thinking. And so I really aspire to living like that. Do I make mistakes? Sure, I make mistakes every day, right? But I really want to live in a way that feels inspired to other leaders and just continue to evolve and to grow myself. And I think that that's a big piece that intrinsically keeps me connected to what I'm doing. So
With the amount of time that we have left, I just have two questions for you. The first one, of course, is rather simple. Where can people find you? The professional, Allie Stone. Where are you on the web?
yeah, I think the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. You can just look up Allie Stone and then you can kind of find me from there on other channels. But LinkedIn's always a great place to connect professionally. So I'd love to connect with you there.
And once they do that, what's the first inspirational thing that you're going to tell the person who connects with you? And this is my last question.
Good question. Well, I think it's different for everybody when I hear your story, but I mean, I think it's just important to know that all I want to say right now is if you're listening to this podcast today and you're in a place where you're like, oh, I feel this, I've been grinding through my career, I've been grinding through my days. It's important to know that life is always in flux. Everything is always changing and you can have the life and career that you dream of. It is possible. I'm a walking model of that, and my clients are walking models of that. And so just know, like, whether you're drawn to me or somebody else, but know that it's possible and that you can actually do these things for yourself. Don't settle, you know? We only get this one life. Depends on what you believe, but you only get this one life and you might as well enjoy it and you might as well live it to the fullest. And so that would probably be what I would say to anybody listening.
That's probably the perfect ending to this conversation. Allie Stone, thank you for joining me on the Coach's Corner. For those of you who are watching and listening, I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Take care.